Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 28-year personal injury lawyer. And this is the podcast where we talk all things personal injury law related. And up today, we've got a review of 2024 and jury verdicts that occurred in the Kansas City metropolitan area. So today it's inside the jury box, a breakdown of 2024 jury verdict trend. If you've ever wondered, how does a claim eventually get resolved if it doesn't settle out of court? Well, it's in front of a jury. 12 people decide what, if anything, you're going to get for your claim. And so the question on the table is, are jury verdicts out of control, runaway juries, things that we hear a lot of times in the news from things that we hear from insurance company lobbyists, Chamber of Commerce lobbyists. They put those themes out into the world with the idea that juries are running rampant, people are receiving crazy amounts of money, and basically anybody that files a lawsuit is getting money regardless of how frivolous that lawsuit may be. So what do actual statistics show? And it's really important as a trial lawyer, which I am, and again, I'm in the personal injury world. It's really important for me, number one, to stay up on top of what is going on with personal injury claims when they go to trial. And number two, it's really important for me to have personal experience getting in front of juries and seeing how they handle a claim. And so one thing that we do here is we subscribe to a service that provides us with insight, weekly insight as to how claims, personal injury claims, are resolving when they go all the way through a jury trial. Because obviously, on a law firm basis, we might only have one or two jury trials a year. That's pretty standard for most personal injury law firms. And that's because if you're doing it correctly, you're working up a claim in such a way that it incentivizes an insurance company to get the claim resolved before you ever have to step in front of a jury. But there are times when, for whatever reason, both sides, insurance company and the person making the claim and their lawyer, just simply cannot close the gap on the value of the claim to get it settled out of court. And I've explained this before, I'll explain it again. We always say settle out of court. Now, there are times where we are technically in court, we have filed a lawsuit, but just because we file a lawsuit, that does not mean automatically that it's going to a jury trial. A claim can get settled at any point. A claim can get settled during a jury trial before a jury ever renders a verdict. So you file a lawsuit, you're going through that process. It usually takes a year, certainly 8 months to get a trial date on the court's calendar. Because as you can imagine, there are a lot of claims. And this isn't just personal injury claims, right? There's all kinds of things going on in court, whether it's criminal, whether it's business litigation, right? Business lawsuits, whether it's tenant landlord disputes. I mean, our courts have a lot going on. And so when you go to ask the court for a date to have a jury trial, it just doesn't happen next week. I'd also talked before about how TV can certainly give the wrong impression, because you watch these TV shows, and because they've got to pack something into a 40-minute or a 1 hour show, somebody is in a car accident or whatever it is. And next thing you know, within 3 weeks, right, they're going to have a jury trial. And that's not how it works at all. There's a long process. It involves exchanging written questions amongst the parties. Then it involves taking depositions. You might have expert witnesses that have to be identified and getting their depositions taken. And then, there's legal motions that might be filed and have to get ruled on, just all that kind of stuff. And it takes time. And then again, you have the court's calendar that has a lot on it. And so when you show up and ask the court for a date, you're usually looking at minimum 8 months out, and you're probably looking at a year out for sure. We've just set 3 cases for trial here in the last month. And, one of them is at the end of 2025. So I'm recording this in January of 2025. So one of them, end of 2025. The others are all set in 2026, early part of 2026. So again, about a year out. But my job, one of my responsibilities to my clients as a solid personal injury lawyer is to keep on top of what is the value of a claim like the one my client has. And so, if I just went off of my own personal experience of what is happening in my little world, that wouldn't be enough. You've got to know what is happening in your area to have a really good understanding when you're guiding a client, you're guiding a client's expectations, and you, as a personal injury lawyer, are maximizing the claim. I always tell clients, my job is not to get you as much money as I can. It's to get you as much money as I reasonably can, because you've got to weigh the uncertainties of a jury trial and what a jury might do with this claim against what you want, what you think is fair. I've heard it many times said, a fair settlement is where neither side is happy. Insurance company thinks they're paying too much, and the person that was hurt and is making the claim thinks they're not getting enough. That's the definition of a fair settlement. And honestly, that's probably the fair definition of any deal, right? Everybody gives and you come to some resolution. And you do that because of the uncertainty. Because if you just push down the road, you don't know what is going to happen. There's no way to know. The only thing you can do is look at data and have some idea of the likelihood of what's going to happen. And that way you try to get a value of where a claim should settle. So today we're going to break down. I'm going to pull up on the screen a year-end review. So again, weekly we get reports. We get detailed reports of the jury trials that happened, the facts involved, and what the result was. And then at the year end, this service sends out a summary of what happened. And it's always a really interesting document to review and kind of see what the trends are. And that way, kind of ready to go into the new year. with this information. It's also a fascinating study on the counterpoint to what we hear. We get bombarded sometimes, depending on the political cycle, of what juries are doing in reality. So I'm going to pull this up. All right, so what I have up on the screen is the year-end report that we get from the Jury Verdict Service. And you'll see here, it's the Greater Kansas City Jury Verdict Service. And so basically what this covers is the counties of Clay, Jackson, Wyandotte, Johnson, I'm sorry, so Wyandotte County, Kansas, Johnson County, Kansas, Platte County, Missouri. These are the, plus this also includes federal courts that had jury verdicts in them, which is the District Court of Johnson County, Kansas, the District Court of Wyandotte County, Kansas, and then the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Missouri, and the District Court for the District of Kansas. So it gives a pretty wide overview of this entire Kansas City metropolitan area. So again, this is really important information for us to have. And what I can tell you as a very quick overview is looking at this 2024 breakdown. There were a decrease in trials from the year before. There were reduced verdict amounts from the year before. And, it depends. There's a variation between Kansas and Missouri as to how things unfolded. So we could go through here. So you'll see how this is broken down. You got Jackson County, Jackson County. So Jackson County has two courts, downtown Kansas City, Independence, Missouri. Clay County is over in Liberty. Platte County is in Platte City. Wyandotte County is over in KCK. Johnson County is out in Johnson County. And then you have your federal courts. And overall, there was a 27% decrease in jury trials from 2023. Now, my take on that is this. We came out of COVID. So as you probably can imagine, courts were essentially shut down during COVID. There were very, very, very few trials happening. They did do some video trials. Interestingly enough, they brought juries into larger venues where they could spread out. A lot of it was done remotely. And so, but overall, the takeaway was there were a whole lot less jury verdicts happening 2021, 2022. So then 2023, the end of 22, certainly 23 came along, and all these trials that had been pushed off were now on the docket. So 2023 saw a higher than usual amount of jury trials happening. So it's no real surprise that then in 2024, we kind of got back to a level of normalcy. It still may be somewhat elevated, but there was 27% fewer trials in 2023, or excuse me, in 2024 than there were in 23. In 2024, there were 134 jury verdicts in the Kansas City metro area, and that was down from 217 in 2023. So again, almost a 30% drop. Also of interest is the fact that in 2024, the people making claims, so they're called plaintiffs. So someone that's hurt or otherwise making a claim, they are called a plaintiff in the legal setting. And in 2024, the success rate for a plaintiff, meaning a jury finding in their favor, was only 40%. less than half of the people that went to trial making a claim got a verdict in their favor. This was down from 2023 when 48% of plaintiffs got a jury verdict. But again, less than half. So just this statistic alone shows you that just because you file a lawsuit and you go through a jury trial, juries are not automatically, quote unquote, giving away money. Less than half the time, they're finding for the person that's getting sued or the company that's getting sued. So it's very interesting. And you'll see here on the screen, this is like the breakdown of each county. So for just an example, the very first one, Jackson County at Kansas City, you had 46 claims that went to jury trial. 16 of those were found in favor of the plaintiff. So that's only a 35% success rate for plaintiffs. Now, out of those, the average plaintiff's verdict was $582,498. But what does that mean exactly? Well, that's the average. And there's always some large verdicts, very large verdicts, because of whether it's some type of kind of class action, for lack of a better word, or something like that, that results in a very large multi-million-dollar verdict that kind of skews the entire average. Okay, and we don't get the mean amount of verdicts, which would be the midpoint. But if we did, the mean amount is going to be a whole lot less. The middle verdict range is going to be a whole lot less. It was also interesting to note that in 2024, the largest verdict recorded in the metropolitan area was $33.4 million. Okay. But in 2023, the largest recorded verdict was $1.79 billion. And I don't remember what that was, but obviously it was a major case, and it wasn't a typical car accident or something like that. It was something obviously very extreme. And again, see, it's verdicts like that skew the entire averages. But you can see in 2024, the largest verdict amount was a whole heck of a lot less than the largest verdict amount from 2023. Now, breaking down 2024 a little bit more, there were fewer $1 million verdicts in 2024. So there were 14 $1 million verdicts in 2024 compared to 31 in 2023. So obviously over a 50% drop in $1 million verdicts. And there were the notable cases. There were 5 verdicts in Jackson County of $1 million or more. And then also in federal court, there were some significant high value jury verdicts that contributed to the overall averages for 2024. In auto cases, right? So automobile accidents, you can see all these different breakdowns here. You got where there was a passenger making a claim, got where the allegation was the defendant violated the right of way, there's driving while intoxicated, lane change, plaintiff hit rear end collision, plaintiff hit in the rear, right? It breaks down the specific types of claims that were going to jury verdict. And again, you can see over here, this is the, for example, first line, you got 5 cases that went to jury verdict by a passenger making a claim. 3 of those were successful, 2 of them were not. So it was a 60% favorable verdict for plaintiffs, and that was the average. 738,000 was the average verdict amount. So really high average verdict amount on those. And again, we don't have the specifics here. This is all summary information. The weekly reports are what show more specifics. You can see here of interest that driving while intoxicated, so when people made claims against drunk drivers, there were 3 of those that went to jury verdict. 2 of the 3 resulted in a plaintiff's verdict. You'd almost think, right, how could somebody lose a case against a drunk driver? But again, specific facts matter. This is my point. There is no guarantee with a jury. And so, when you hear that, oh yeah, everybody's getting money, that's not true. And that also goes to the point that if you can settle a claim within a reasonable value, you should. Because obviously there were lawyers and there was a plaintiff, person making the claim, on one of these drunk driver cases that thought, we can win this, right? We're going to do really well. And it didn't happen. And so 67% of the verdicts, again, there were only 3. So 2 out of the 3 resulted in a plaintiff's verdict. Now look at this. $34 million was the average verdict size on a drunk driver jury verdict situation. And that tells you that juries don't like drunk drivers, right? Nobody does. And they can get really mad about it. And as a result, they can award the person that was hurt by the drunk driver a lot of money. But anyway, this is a breakdown. Just real quickly, other case categories, because it does include other things. Here's a full breakdown of all the different types of cases that went before juries in 2024. So you can see, right? It's not just car accidents. It's not just falls, things like that. You've got business litigation. You got breach of contract, breach of employment contract, lots of employment lawsuits out there. People claiming discrimination, retaliation, retaliatory discharge, and that all is recorded. And then you got dental malpractice, medical malpractice. Of note, medical malpractice, you'll see there were, now look at this. This will tell you something. There were 8 medical malpractice cases that went to jury trial. And of those, only one was successful. Now that one resulted in an $8 million verdict. So, but the problem is, and we don't handle medical malpractice. The lawyers that handle medical malpractice, I mean, usually that's all they do. And they're very selective because of this right here. This tells you everything you need to know. Medical malpractice claims are very expensive to pursue. You have to hire doctor experts, and you have to work up the case usually with other types of experts, life care experts, economic experts. So a lot goes into a medical malpractice claim. And there's a lot of risk, as shown right here. There were 3 medical malpractice wrongful death claims. So people were claiming that the medical malpractice led to the death of someone. Only one of those was successful. So a third of those. And as you can see, it was only a $34,000 verdict. So that's why, unfortunately, I get calls from people, they maybe weren't treated very well or something by a hospital, a doctor, whatever it is. And again, I don't even handle that type of situation, but I know that based on what they're telling me, there wasn't enough of an injury or something more serious that a medical malpractice lawyer is going to be willing to take the risk of pursuing it for them. And then, you've got your fraud cases, right? Whether it's in real estate or some contract issue, Missouri Merchandising Act, which covers a whole bunch of different kind of consumer areas. You can see there were 6 verdicts, and only one of those was in favor of the person making the claim. Now, under the Missouri Human Rights Act, there were 4 claims, and 3 of those were successful. And so people had more success there. Products liability, so where somebody's claiming a defective product caused injury, death, whatever it might be, 2 of those were presented to juries, and none of them were successful. My World, slip and falls, 6 of those went to juries, and only 2 of those were successful. So again, a 1/3 success rate. Now, the 2 that were successful ended up with an average of over $1 million in a compensation amount. But again, slip and falls can be really difficult. And, when I'm guiding clients through those, I have to explain to them, they are not slam dunks. This isn't a rear end automobile collision where you were sitting at a red light and you got hit by somebody and you had absolutely no fault in it. When you're in front of a jury making a claim for a slip and fall, the jury is allowed to assess your fault as well. And a lot of times, juries put 100% of the fault on the person that fell, and they don't think the property owner had any responsibility. So these are all really interesting. There were 2 wrongful death claims that were not automobile related, and they were successful. There were 2, and 2 resulted in verdicts, and the average verdict of those was $10 million. Again, don't know the circumstances, but clearly there was success there in those types of claims, but I don't know the specifics, but obviously there were some pretty egregious facts or losses to support that kind of verdict average. All right. So as we move forward into 2025, it'll be interesting to see how the trends develop. Are we still normalizing coming out of COVID? I mean, it seems to me, again, as I mentioned at the top of this episode, we just set 3 cases for trial. They're on sort of the normal track of 8 months to a year out. So it seems like the courts have rebounded from COVID, and I have a feeling that we'll probably be in the same general area. I don't expect, major drop-offs or anything like that in jury trials from 2024. So it'll be really interesting. I'm always fascinated to see what's going on. So just jumping back to the driving while intoxicated and insurance. So I should have explained, underinsured or uninsured, those are claims that people are making directly against their insurance company for obviously an underinsured motorist or an uninsured motorist. And if you don't really understand that, you need to find my video on underinsured and uninsured and why it's so important for you to have good insurance. You can click on the video link up here in the corner, come back on, put it up here for you. Click on that because you need to make sure you've got good insurance, and this is the reason why, but that's what that is. So coming back here. So underinsured, uninsured, and driving while intoxicated. So as we already kind of addressed, the DUI cases, they have a higher success rate, 67%, than really any of the other automobile type claims. The underinsured, uninsured, you'll see have a 100% success rate. People don't like insurance companies. And when you're making a direct claim against an insurance company, the odds are on your side that you're probably going to be successful at trial. And that's been my personal experience. I've basically never lost an underinsured or uninsured claim that I've had to go all the way through a jury trial. But that doesn't mean we don't settle a whole bunch of them either, because if they're offering a fair value for the claim, then you are saving uncertainty, you're saving a mass amount of time and expense to get things done. Also of note in all of this is a lot of these higher dollar awards usually have punitive damages attached to them, which is there to discourage future misconduct. And again, usually, whether that's, the driving while intoxicated, this verdict, if memory serves me, or I'm sorry, these verdicts, this is the average, those involve punitive damages on all of those. So that's where those really get bumped up. The other interesting part is if you look at these underinsured or uninsured claims, usually they're going to also have higher verdict amounts. So of interest, this underinsured or uninsured, these claims that had a punitive damage aspect, there were 3 of those, all successful. They had a lot lower verdict amount. And that's just kind of an interesting finding, and I don't have any more detail on that. So, all right, well, so that's just a overview of the yearly report that we get here at our firm. We subscribe to this. I don't think every personal injury firm does, but it's really insightful. Again, and what's even more insightful are the weekly reports that we get, because every week we're seeing the specific facts, and that really helps us guide our clients when we're trying to determine, is what's being offered by the insurance company, is that a reasonable amount to get the claim settled, or should we keep pushing forward to a jury trial? So I hope, as always, you found this useful. And if you need anything, if you're facing any kind of a claim, feel free to reach out. We're always here, 816-400-4878. Again, encourage you to watch that other video. You have to make sure you have the right insurance and the right amount of insurance. And until the next episode, be safe, be well.